Hello everyone, welcome to Easy Economics. How are you all doing? Today I brought for you all a new series for topical past paper solutions for 0455 and 2281. In today's session, we'll be focusing on questions related to section 2 and section 3. The paper that I've selected for you all today is from IGCSE 0455, this variant 23 from June 2023. The questions I've selected are question number 2 and question number 3. We'll be doing selected parts of these questions, and the sections which we'll be focusing on are section 2 and section 3. The reason why I've selected these questions is that I wanted you all to get familiar with the terminology of the questions that fall under these two sections, and that you all learn how to answer the questions as per the CIE standards in order to score the highest tier band and to learn how to structure your responses accordingly. All right. The first is question number 2. Liechtenstein is a high-income economy in the middle of Europe. The country's low tax rates and low levels of regulation make it an attractive place for foreign firms and individuals to open bank accounts. Further, they tell us that the firm's cost of production are high, but this is slightly offset by low indirect taxation. Now, they've given us a brief introduction about this economy that's situated in the middle of Europe, and all they're trying to tell us is that though there are low tax rates in the country and there is less regulation, which is why MNCs and individuals from abroad find it attractive to come and invest in here. And they're saying although the firm's cost of production in Liechtenstein are high, but it's offset by a low indirect taxation. That means that since there is a less level of indirect taxation, it's relatively lesser, so the high cost of production is being offset, is being negated by low levels of indirect taxation. Now, the first part is asking us to identify two types of cost to a firm. Now, if you look closely at it, it's a 2-mark question. And the terminology in the question is identify. So as long as it's asking us to identify, all it's asking us to do is that we just need to list it down. So any two types of cost to a firm. So now we can talk about either variable cost, or we can talk about fixed cost. We can mention average variable cost, or we can mention average fixed cost. Mentioning any of these two costs would yield us full 2 marks. I could say about variable costs, that's a cost that varies with the level of output, right? For example, electricity. Fixed cost is a cost that does not change with the level of output, right? It has to be paid even when the output is 0. For example, rent, right? The cost of raw materials is also variable cost, right? The cost of fuel, variable cost, right? Or you could say average variable cost or average fixed cost. Average variable cost is total variable cost divided by the total level of output produced. Average fixed cost is what? Total fixed cost divided by the total units of output produced, right? So identifying any two of these type of costs and writing a statement or so would yield you 2 marks for this first part. All right, let's look at part B. Part B is asking us to explain two roles of commercial banks for firms. Now, we all know what are commercial banks. Commercial banks are financial institutions that provide banking services to firms, individuals, right? And to institutions, right? Now, it's a 4-mark question. Now, how have they distributed the marks in this question is at 1 mark, will be given to you for identification for the first role, and the other mark for the explanation of that first role. The third mark will be awarded to you once you've identified the second role for the commercial bank, and for explanation of that second role, it will give you full 4 marks. All right. Now, the first role for the commercial banks that provides it to the firms, it could be providing loans. How? Now, you've identified one of the roles, now you give the explanation. Now, what explanation can you give under this role of commercial banks? You can say commercial banks offer loans to firms to finance expansion, or to provide them with sufficient capital, or to cover their day-to-day running expenses or operational costs, right? Similarly, you could also say they allow them to issue checks so that they manage their day-to-day expenses, right? Or you could say they allow them to make deposits, right? How? The banks safeguard firms' funds, and they allow them to manage liquidity for their daily transactions, for the day-to-day running expenditure, right? So what does it do? It safeguards the firm's funds, and it allows them to manage liquidity for their daily transactions. Or you could say it allows them to make currency exchange in order to make international transactions, right? Or you could say it processes their payments, right, in order to manage their day-to-day running expenses. Or it also provides them insurance, right, to cover and mitigate their risks. So I have listed a couple of these roles which commercial banks provide to firms. Pick any two out of these and provide explanation for each of them, would yield you full 4 marks. So whenever you are answering such questions, pay heed to the key term, look at the marks, and write accordingly. Again, the first part which we did, identification of cost to the firm, was again out of section 2. This is related to section 2 costs. This part B is related to money and banking, right? This is section 3, money and banking. Analyze causes of differences in the level of income between countries. Now, this is related to section 5. It's talking about living standards. However, still I've just included it in order to give you an understanding of this. This is related to section 5. Now, part C. Part C is asking us to analyze the causes of differences in the level of income between countries. Now, notice, it's a 6-mark question. What are they asking us? They are asking us to explain why there exists differences in the level of income between countries, right? So now they are asking you, why do you think, or provide the reasons that there exists a difference in income between countries, right? Now, when there exists a difference regarding income among countries, you must realize the most important thing, that differences in national income is determined by national output, right? So every country's income is based upon the national output it produces, right? So the differences in national output will be caused by what? Will be related to the levels of development, right? So the higher the developed the country is, the higher would be its earning, right? Similarly, the higher the education in a country would be, the higher would be, the more skilled and talented its labor force pool would be, right? So this means the productivity would be high. When productivity would be high, what would happen? The output levels would be high. So when the output levels would be high, they'll be producing more, they'll be selling more, they'll be exporting more. As a result, the income levels would be relatively high. Now, this is a 6-mark question. All you need to do is identify the differences that yield towards the differences among the incomes between countries. You will develop that cause and effect relationship. So you are not only going to provide the reasons, you are going to develop that link analysis. That chain and link analysis, you're going to identify the reasons and you're going to provide how it's impacting or bringing about that difference. How is it causing or creating that difference in incomes among countries, right? So you have to produce a coherent analysis. Notice the wording in the question is asking you to analyze. So this means you'll be giving an analysis, a sort of a critical explanation, right? So you'll not just list it down, you'll connect it. You'll bring that connection, you'll bring that coherent analysis in your answer, right? All right. So the first thing you could say that there would be differences in the level of income among countries. It could be one of the reasons could be the level of development existing. For instance, it depends upon how developed a country's primary sector or its secondary sector, the tertiary sectors. So you see what happens when the countries are usually in developing, so their primary sector is considerably larger. However, when countries are developed, they tend to have a larger, comparatively a stronger tertiary sector. More of their labor force is tend to be employed in the tertiary sector and then in the secondary sector, right? And the least amount of their working population is employed in the primary sector. So this causes a great difference in incomes, right? Other thing could be differences in education. So the highly educated the labor force would be, the higher it would earnings would be. Why? Because the labor would tend to be more skilled. So higher education means more talented, more skills, so higher earnings, right? Productivity would also be higher. Differences in savings and investment. Yes, countries which tend to save more and which tend to invest more in technologies tend to produce uh, more output. As a result, their investments, as a result, their earnings will be relatively higher, right? Similarly, differences in healthcare standards. Countries which provide healthcare services to its citizens and have relatively higher living standards uh, will tend to be having a healthier population. As a result, their labor force would be more uh, productive, right? Contributing more towards the production of goods and services. As a result, when the national output would be higher, similarly, it would lead to higher levels of income, right? So, a healthier labor force means a more productive labor force, right? Um, so, more and more people will be employed in the labor force, right? Again, this would lead to higher levels of income. So, you see, this is how you're going to connect and provide reasoning towards the reasons for the differences you've found. Unemployment rates could also be one of the reasons. So, the higher the unemployed rate would be, the lesser would be the level of output, right? So, the country would not be efficient, right? There would not be efficient allocation of resources. There would be underutilization of resources in that scenario. So, if there are lesser levels of unemployment or more and more people are employed, so they would be contributing more towards the GDP of the country, right? As a result, would lead to higher levels of income. Differences in population could be another reason. If more of your population is dependent, so this means there would be larger burden on the working population, right? So there will be lesser amount of people being employed, as a result, lesser contribution towards the production of goods and services that would be yielding to lesser incomes, earnings, right? A, a comparatively lesser living standard. High levels of specialization, if a country has a comparative advantage and more and more its labor force is employed in the specialization of certain goods and services, giving it a competitive edge. So it will be earning relatively higher incomes. Why? Because the other countries will not have that edge, or that comparative advantage. So it would lead the country to earn maybe more foreign exchange. As a result, the living standard of that country will be relatively higher. And this could be one of the reasons why there exist differences in earnings among countries, right? Availability of natural resources. Yes, if certain countries have more levels of natural resources, such as gold, uh, so they would be relatively having a higher living standard, leading to higher earnings, right? So pick out any three Develop that chain analysis, develop that coherent analysis, write effectively, and will enable you to earn full 6 mark for this part. All right. I hope this question is clear. Let's move on to question number 3. Question number 3 says the number of Chinese restaurants in the UK fell by approximately 7% in 2020 compared to the year before. Now, what happened in 2020? There was a decline in UK in the number of Chinese restaurants that were operating. So, compared to the last year, that means in 2019, whatever the number of restaurants, Chinese restaurants were operating in the UK, approximately 7% of them, there was a decline in that. They may be shut down, right? Reasons for this include falling demand for Chinese food and increasing competition from other types of food. So now they are attributing two reasons to this fall. They're saying one is that there was a fall in the demand for Chinese food. This means there was a change in consumer preferences. There was a change in consumer taste. And the other was the increasing competition from other types of food. That means maybe the consumers found it less appealing and they moved towards other types of food, maybe Italian, or maybe Thai, or maybe Japanese, or maybe Indian cuisine, right? Small, some small firms selling Chinese food are also unwilling to invest in the latest technology because of the possible opportunity cost. And now they are saying that firms which are relatively smaller in size are finding it discouraging to invest in the latest technology because it involves an opportunity cost, right? So when they're looking at this statistics or when they're looking at this consumer behavior, so they're a little reluctant as far as investing in technologies. Why? Because it involves an opportunity cost, right? Now, let's look at the questions. The first part say identify two challenges facing small firms. Now, what is a small firm? A firm which is relatively small in size, right? Which has got a smaller level of operations, right? Which does not cater to a large market, which is limited in size, has got is struggling or has got lesser amount of capital, right? Now, again, this is related to small firms. This is again related to firms, section 2, right? Now, they're asking us to identify two challenges facing small firms. Again, the key term over here is identify. So you will identify any two challenges facing small firms. This is again a 2-mark question. So the first could be facing competition. Yes, small firms find it relatively difficult to survive and meet competition because they're relatively small in size, right? Other could be they are not famous, so they do not have that established goodwill as compared to the larger, already established firms. So they find it relatively difficult to establish themselves, and it takes them a lot of time to establish that goodwill, to establish that reputation, and earn fame among the masses, right? Similarly, being smaller in size means that they are unable to borrow large sums of money from banks, right? Banks are unwilling to provide them with larger amount of loans, right? So they are, as compared to firms which are larger in size, banks would be relatively unwilling to give them loans in larger amounts, right? In higher denominations, right? Similarly, being smaller in size means that they would be unable to enjoy economies of scale. Economies of scale means that they would find it relatively difficult to have a lower levels of average cost, right? Because their scale of operations is small. So when their output level would be small, so they would not be able to enjoy that level of average cost, which a relatively larger firm could have been earning, right? All right. So pick out any two of these and write a 1 line or 2 line on it, and then you'll be good to identify it, and just you're good to word. All right. Let's move on to part B. Part B says explain two possible opportunity costs for firms if they invest in the latest technology. Now, What is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is the cost of the best alternative foregone due to a particular choice made. What is the choice being made in this part? That the firm is investing in the latest technology. That the firm is investing in the latest technology. Now, if the firm is investing in the latest technology, so what is happening? It would not be able to do something which it could have done elsewise. So now they are asking us to explain. So it's again a 4 mark question. Now, this is again related to, this is asking us opportunity cost, this is related to section 1, right? Now, 1 mark would be identification for the first opportunity cost. Another mark for explanation of that opportunity cost you've identified. The third mark would be for identification of the second opportunity cost, and explanation of that second opportunity cost would give you the fourth mark, right? The full 4 marks, right? Now, you tell me what you think could be an opportunity cost if a firm decides to invest in technology. Now, you see, we are already investing in what? Investing in capital. So the opportunity cost would have to be related to either land or labor, right? So if a firm is already investing in technology, so what it is could not have been doing. So if a firm is investing in technology, it would be unable to buy land. Maybe it wanted to expand. So now if a firm has decided to invest in technology, it would be unable to buy land for expansion of, let's say, its production facility, right? Or if it's investing in technology, it would be unable to spend on promotion. It would be unable to spend on its advertising of its products, right? Since it's spending on technology, it would be having no funds, right? Or if a firm decides to invest in technology, it would be unable to hire specialist or skilled labor. It would not have funds to provide wages to specialist labor, so it would have to forego this alternative, right? Or it could be that now, since the firm is investing in technology, it would be having lesser profits to be shared or to be reinvested back in the firm. Maybe it wanted to save for future expansion or future purchase of land, or maybe it wanted to distribute it among the owners, right? Among the shareholders, right? So now investing in technology means that it could not be retained back in the firm, right? Or the profits could not be shared, right? So this is how you will identify any of those two opportunity costs and explain them in order to yield you full 4 marks. All right, let's look at part C. Part C is again related to demand, that talks about section 2 of your 0455 and 2281 syllabus, right? Now, part C is asking us to analyze two causes of a fall in demand for Chinese food. Now, earlier in the question, they already told us two reasons. Now, look at the phrasing of the question. It's asking us to analyze. Again, they are asking you to provide the examiner with a coherent analysis. What does a coherent analysis mean? Again, you will develop that chain link analysis, right? You will not just give a reason. You need to link it to how the reason is impacting or causing a fall in demand for Chinese food. Now, earlier in the question, if you realize, it was there in the very second line that they said that the reason for this fall was that there was a fall in the demand for Chinese food, increasing competition from other types of food. So now this was because that there was a change in the consumer preferences, right? Falling demand for Chinese food and increasing competition. This means that not only the preferences and the taste of consumers changed, it also switched to other cuisines, right? So we can choose these and we can build that link analysis in the question. Either you could say that there was a change in taste and preferences, right? Now the consumers um, no longer wanted to eat more of Chinese food. They were more inclined towards eating food, Indian cuisines or Thai, Japanese, or maybe Italian, right? Or there was maybe a fall in the level of income. You see, maybe the earnings of the people fell, and dining out could be seen as a luxury, right? So now a fall in income meant that less people were eating out, right? So as a result, the demand for Chinese food fell, right? Or you could say maybe because the substitutes were cheaper, maybe the Indian cuisine was relatively cheaper, or maybe uh, the Italian food was relatively cheaper. So now the consumers switched to relatively cheaper options, right? Uh, the price of the substitutes fell. You could say maybe there was better quality and more affordable. They found it more affordable and high quality. Chinese, instead of consuming Chinese food, maybe they found Italian food, or maybe they found Thai cuisine or Indian cuisine to be more of high quality and more affordable. So now the consumers switched. Or it could be that there were more advertising by the competitors. Maybe uh, it was due to heavy advertising campaigns by Italian, maybe the pizza manufacturers, they heavily advertised. As a result, more and more consumers were enticed and they were inclined towards eating and switching from eating Chinese foods, and they switched towards eating from Chinese to pizzas, right? So identification leading towards a fall in the demand for Chinese food. So you will identify the reasons, develop the chain link analysis, and provide a coherent analysis. Pick out any three reasons, develop that coherent analysis, and you'll get this full 6 marks. All right. I hope you've understood what we've done today. I selected questions related from section 2 and 3. Stay tuned, subscribe. I'll be back with more such questions and with questions from other sections as well. Take care. Happy learning.